Hey, everybody, welcome again to Poulsbo Rotary's Career Talks. And one of the great kind of careers can be the helping profession. I'm here with my friend Ann Pyles. Ann, welcome to this program.
Glad to be here, Forrest.
It's great. Just as we're speaking and getting this started, I have the honor to be the chair of the vocational services part of the club. Now, what that points to is that all vocations are worthy. And if I'm a professional doing law or a doctor, or I'm starting farmers markets, or I'm a farmer, or I'm a plumber, or whatever, all these pathways are absolutely honored. And what you've just started to tell me as we got this thing going is one of your kind of treasured memories of being on the helping side and volunteerism through most of your life. Let's go again with what was the memory you were recounting a moment ago?
Right. Well, I told you that I had helped start three nonprofit foundations in my lifetime and had several businesses. But the foundation, the nonprofit that I'm the most proud of, and I think the one that's the most long lasting and will be the longest lasting, is the Poulsbo Farmers Market.
Oh.
And my husband and we worked with other farmers, and he and I particularly spent 2 years traveling all around Washington and Oregon, visiting all of the farmers markets that we knew about, talking to the farmers markets associations to see how they were run, to make sure how we wanted to run this market. And we decided we want a professionally run market, a manager that we would pay to run the market year round so that they could visit the vendors in the off season. They could decide on how the market should run, that they would be flexible and available. And so this is the 20th year of that market. It was started in 2002.
How about
so I'm very proud of that.
Well, as you should be. You and your husband, John, got that going. It was a farmer's market kind of thing, something you were part of as farmers too, or you wanted to just help it get going?
Well, actually, it was funny because we started farming because we wanted to farm.
Yes.
So we started farming, but we didn't have any place to take our vegetables.
Oh, sure.
Things or the fruits and stuff that we grew. And so it came out of necessity. I wasn't happy with the Silverdale market. I really didn't like the Bremerton market. At that time, we weren't allowed to go onto the Bainbridge market. Oh. You had to be on Bainbridge Island in order to be a vendor there.
Sure.
So we knew that there was the probability that there were just a lot of other people like us that didn't have a place for their produce.
Nice.
And so that was the impetus for it. But then as it grew, it just became really an important community project, and it became a community meeting place for people.
Yes.
And they would bring their dogs and they would have food. We have music every week. And we started that from the very beginning, those kinds of things, because we wanted a community gathering place, because Poulsbo didn't really have that. It didn't have it at all. They didn't have something that happened on a weekly basis. And the goal really is to have a year-round market, but they don't have the space for it. Sure. And they don't have any money. So basically, I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Well, isn't it something? And I think farmers markets have a wonderful vantage point or a viewpoint into a community. And as you said, it's a meeting place. As I've been out there and staffed a booth or two over time and been in the market, we love them. And our time in Hawaii, it was a real rich farmers market spot over there too. So I'm really glad. And as you think about it, what were some of the things that you draw or that you get as satisfaction from having done all that? I'm sure you sort of touched on some of them, but what else comes to mind? What were some of the lessons learned from all this?
Well, I really got to know the vendors, the original vendors. I don't know hardly any of the vendors now, and I'm not on the board anymore. Oh. What happened with us is we left the farmers market and being presidents and being on the board in 2009 when we lived and worked in Djibouti, Africa. Oh. And that's a whole nother life experience that we had. And that experience is the one that really got me into doing international service projects with Rotary.
Well, tell me more. And now, what did you do in Africa? What was that project?
My husband's an international salt consultant. He helps make salt around the world. And he had an opportunity to actually start a salt plant from scratch in Djibouti.
Hmm.
And he said, "You want to go?" I said, "I only want to go if I can work, because I just can't sit around and not do anything." And so the first thing that I was doing is I was like a community liaison. I had an interpreter that worked with me all the time.
Hmm.
And we visited the community. We visited the ministers of health, education, because our plant was located 40 miles outside of Djibouti City, and there were no services there. And Djiboutians, the Afars in the countryside where we lived, and our employees were nomadic. So wherever there was work, they came, and that's where they lived. And they brought their Deboides and their homes and their, everything, their families. But there was no water, and there was no available water, no wells in that area, and there was no health care, and there was no education for the kids.
Oh,
So we tried to work with all of those different ministers to try to get access services. We were able to access a minimal amount, but we were able to, within a project between the Djibouti Rotary Club and the Poulsbo Rotary Club, we were able to get some water filters,
hmm.
because we were having our Djiboutian children dying at the hospital from all
My,
kinds of amoebic problems. I used to take them to the hospital all the time. And so after we got the water filters, we didn't have any more problems. We had
that's,
no more dead children. And
that's
it was
incredible.
amazingly, yeah. We also had a cleanup. I managed a cleanup campaign,
Hmm.
and I managed their medical clinic. So yeah, that's
And
what.
this is it's a great insight into two or three things. But one thing is there is such need in the world. And I think as I or any of us might have a close focus on what we're doing in life and worrying about or thinking about our own stuff, to open our awareness and to where we can be of help in the world. And that's in our both in our own community, but in somewhere like that Africa setting. No water, difficult, having to be a nomadic family. It must just have been a real eye opener as you
Mhm.
shared.
Yeah, and they were wonderful people. But they just, the average education was fourth grade.
Boy.
And so they'd never had the opportunity. And so it was amazing. John was starting programs to actually bring some of the Afar, especially one woman who really wanted to speak English and has now since immigrated to the United States with her
Oh,
family, into the lab. She was a housekeeper, but he made her a lab tech.
oh,
So, I mean, there was just a lot of opportunity to do all of that kind of thing. We were supposed to be there for 3 years, but we only stayed for a year and a half because they decided to sell the business. So, yeah.
okay. Well, it's a great story. And it's good to hear somebody who's married to a guy who's real salt of the earth. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
right.
You've heard that one before. But you know what, Ann, I wonder what advice would you give either some young person or maybe somebody who's in career change about the path of being in the nonprofit world or in the helping side? What thoughts come to mind as to advice about the rewards of that and the enrichment from that?
Um, Maybe have to go back to my background. I have a psychology degree,
Mhm.
but I never really I worked as a counselor at one time, but really I was deep down in my heart, I'm a business person. That's what I am. I'm a business person. And so for 25 years, I had my own home health aid agencies in the Bay Area. One agency was very large. I had it for 10 years. And it had 750 employees in 5 different offices in 5 different counties of the East Bay, San Francisco. And the second company I had also for 10 plus years, and it was a much smaller but very specialized home health aid agency and a geriatric care management company. We worked with a lot of private professionals to manage and maintain very difficult patients at home.
Uh,
So that I only had 120 employees, but we did more live-ins than anybody in the whole county or state,
wow.
and that was in Palo Alto. So during that period of time, that's when I became involved in Rotary.
Hmm.
And that's been the largest single I've been a Rotarian for now over 25 years, sometime between 25 and 30 years. And that's given me the most opportunity. I've been, I've did community service for a long time. I was the international chairperson for international service, as well as several times. And I was a co-chair this last year. I'm stepping down from that position now, but will be extremely active on the committee. And I've also worked in domestic violence since 1978.
Oh boy.
And in that's another very, very cause dear to my heart. And I was the president of the board of SAVE, and that was the name of our organization that we started. And I was able to get them a block grant fund in order to purchase a large facility where we could house up to 15 women and their children. And that's still going today.
Nice.
So that's from 1978, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so I'm a founding mother of that organization. And that's why I work so much with artists in the domestic violence committee here in Poulsbo.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Wow.
So,
well, it's just great. And what you're also speaking to, Ann, is that even on a track of business and having a complication of that, the challenges that go with that, I should say, that there can be another chapter in career change. We all have many careers in this life. And as we would give advice to somebody, there's so many ways to help. And the enrichment that comes from that may be undiscovered territory for some people.
And your new friend and your friendships too. The friends that I've made from these two organizations, the Poulsbo Farmers Market, and also from the SAVE group that I worked with, have been, those are my friends for life.
Nice.
They're basically, part of my family.
One of the great joys that I'm finding here in Poulsbo is a community of good-hearted help. And the Rotary Club, these career talks are not just about promoting Rotary, but I'll tell you one thing, back in the 80s, when I joined, I was drawn by the simple water filter projects that were helping communities that didn't have clean water. And those conditions and those needs are still strong. And you've just touched on several important elements where helping was involved, and careers both in the business side, but in the helping side are extremely potent opportunities to have that enriching experience.
I agree. And I think that when young people, like for instance, Kitsap Leadership or Leadership Kitsap is a wonderful organization for young entrepreneurial people, or just, young entrepreneurial people, especially to get into and to learn from. And those relationships and that teamwork that they develop, I think, is really important. But I've probably lived in 10 different communities in my lifetime, maybe 12.
Right.
And of all of the places I have ever lived, Poulsbo is by far the most giving community. I've never asked someone for something that could do it, was capable of doing what I was asking them, for them to say no. I never have. Not once.
Well, and if I was to just guess about this, my sense is that you have a sincere interest that gets communicated and gets expressed when you do that kind of, you talk about these things so people go, I can trust this process. Let me just really highlight that, how important it is for anybody considering either a helping profession or nonprofit work. It's an extremely enriching and sincere way to go. It's a career path that's worth doing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it can have its frustrating points too. I can remember we had one board member at one point on the farmers market that was really abusive, and it was a whole learning thing for myself and for everyone, how to deal with her.
Sure.
And what to do about it, and how to take care of ourselves, and how to stand up for the organization. And that was just, it's not the same as in business when you're working with a fan, because everybody's a volunteer. So it's just not the same. And so I learned a lot. And I was able to really draw on a lot of people here in the community. like Ann Blair, who
Hmm.
taught us how to work as a board and helped us through that process. I was able to work with Dr. Hadley's wife, who's a counselor, to
Hmm.
learn how to behaviorally manage this particular person.
Oh, boy.
I mean, was able to reach out to all of those people that I knew through the League of Women Voters or through Rotary
Nice.
or whatever the organization was that I was with the Master Gardener Foundation. I've been with the Master Gardeners and helped start Rob Park,
Oh, boy.
the community pea patch that's up there. My
Sure.
husband
I know it. I walk my
another
dogs.
Rotarian built that the shed up there for the community garden,
Yeah.
designed and built it. So yeah, that was another wonderful thing when we
Well,
started that as a nonprofit.
this is great. Well, everybody, you're meeting Ann Pyles, and there's so much interesting history and interesting story that each of us has. And I just have great respect for what you've shared with us and what you're up to. Appreciate so much sharing yourself with us here on this career talk track here. Ann, thanks a lot.
You're so welcome.
Okay, great.